be taking a look at here. The side of it a little bit comes from the Bnei Yisachar. There's certain Jews that are connected to certain Yom Tovim in like a big way. The Bnei Yisachar, like a third of the book is Channukah. It's got a tremendous amount. So what? Bnei Yisachar is Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov. So this is before Munkach became. This is almost 200 years ago. Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov, the Bnei Yisachar was a chassid of the Noam Elimelech, and to a very small extent, but primarily a chassid of and a talmid of the chassid of Lublin. His name is Tzvi Elimelech, which is curious because his sefer is called Bnei Yisachar. Usually people call sefer connected something to their name. Where's the Yisachar part? Yisachar. There's certain Hasidim that still that pronounce what we say Yisachar is Yisachar, yeah. But the story is an interesting story. I
would think it has to do with Yisachar.
No,
doesn't.
No,
really.
No. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what the story is. The story is an interesting ma'aseh. The sister of Rav Melech of Lizhansk. Rav Melech had a famous brother, Rav Zusha. They also had a sister, and that sister had unfortunately had many miscarriages, and she had not had a child, and her husband were very broken about this. And she went to her brother, the younger of the two. Rav Zusha was 13 years older than Rav Melech, and said, "Will you give me a bracha for a son?" And he said, "I'll give you a bracha for a son, and you should name him Elimelech, like me. You should name him Elimelech." When the baby was born, the name Elimelech was already old, but he was still alive. And his sister felt bad to call her son after her brother that was still alive, so she added the name Tzvi, Tzvi Elimelech. And Rav Melech Levizhan said about this, he said, Mazel tov, aber a Hirsch is nicht a Malach. Meaning you named your son Tzvi Elimelech, but a Hirsch, which is a deer, is not the same thing as a Melech. So it's he's not going to have the same madriga as he would have had if you would just have named him Elimelech, but nevertheless he's going to fill the whole world with her. So I don't know what he could have been, because what we have from the Bnei Yisachar is Murdik, but nevertheless he became a Rav Melech was niftar shortly after this. But the Talmud, one of the Talmud Muvakim of the Noam Elimelech, was of course the Chayz of Lublin, Yaakov Yisrael of Lublin, known as the Chayz, who taught and raised and educated the Bnei Yisachar. And he told him that because Chayz could see everything, he could understand where you were and where you were coming from, where your neshama came from, wherever it. So he told Rav Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov, he said, the shorish of your neshama is from Shevet Yisachar. So he called his Sefer Bnei Yisachar because that's what his Rebbe told him. He said the root of your neshama is from Yisachar. That's your Shevet. That's where you come from. So we will. So he said, I have to name my Sefer based on that maimer. Now, I want to talk about a sugya that is very practical on the one hand, and on the other hand is, as we'll see, is somewhat esoteric. But the nafkaminas here are very, very practical. And this comes from Maimer Daled in the Mamari Charish Kislev, because the way the Bnei Yisachar works is according to the calendar. There'd be many, many editions, but this is a recent edition that doesn't have any perushim, but it does have clear text. So we're quite excited about that, because Bnei Yisachar is somewhat of a hard book to read. Sometimes it's a little bit in older versions. It was a little bit difficult, but the sugya is an exceedingly important one, and that's the sugya of parnasa. Making a living, earning an income, which, on the one hand, is something that every single person is involved in all the time. throughout our lives. And on the other hand, this is something that, to a very significant extent, is on the one hand, it's essential, and on the other hand, it sometimes feels like it's a pulling away and it's a distraction from who we want to be and what we want to become. Meaning, were it only to be that we could dispense with having to work for our parnasa, how wonderful would that be? We would be able to do a lot of other things. And it's this sugya that the Bnei Yissaschar, this is in Maimer Gimel Ner Mitzvah Ois Chav Daled, that the Bnei Yissaschar deals with this sugya. The truth is, we could spend 5 or 6 hours just on the piece in the Bnei Yissaschar that opens with this. But he quotes from the halacha, the Gemara in Masech Shabbos, with regards to Adlakas Ner Chanukah, and we'll see how this relates very, very deeply to Chanukah. Says Bnei Yissaschar, quoting from the Gemara in Shabbos Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, when do you light your Neres Chanukah? Mitzvasa mi shetaka hachama. The mitzvah of Neres Chanukah is mi shetaka chama, from sunset, ad shetichle regel min hashuk. What does that mean? Ad shetichle regel min hashuk, until the feet have left the marketplace, right? Ve'ad kama. How long is that? How long is that? So the Rishonim already explained, that's about half an hour. That the primary mitzvah is for the half hour after it gets dark. But says the Gemara, ad dechalia rigla de tarmudai, until the feet of the tarmudai, these merchants called the tarmudai, have left the marketplace. It's a peculiar thing to explain. Like, what does that mean? Okay, maybe, or maybe the first one's to leave. Right? Who are these tarmudai? Keep that word in mind. Tarmudai. These tarmudai. We'll get there in a little bit. I'll give you a sneak peek. There is a place called the Talmud that Shlomo HaMelech used to visit. We'll figure out what exactly that place called Talmud is. Married. So what's pshat in married? Yeah. So
the internal merit stuff.
Who are these Talmudai? Who are these Talmudai? These are very, very ancient, these Talmudai.
I thought it was a play on Tardema.
So it is.
Okay.
Talmudai is also connected to the word Tardema. And we'll explain. We'll explain what all of this is. L'chaim Rab. Who are these people? It says the Bnei Yissaschar. Hine kiblu ha'ga'onim. The Ga'onim explains through Shir Chatzi Shah that this is a half hour. You have to ask the question, why doesn't the Gemara simply say that you should light your Neres Chanukah for the half hour? Just say that. So similar simon. Meaning the Gemara says until people have left the marketplace, feet have left the marketplace. And then the Gemara explains who these feet of the Talmudai. It's like a hint on a hint on a hint. What? Just tell me straight. It says, "V'nir l'ramez al pi shemashe kasavti kama pamim b'inyan ner Chanukah nesakin l'ramez ar chachmas haTorah u'bitul chachmas hachitzonius hanikra choshech zeyav." He says it seems to be what the Gemara is getting at here is that the purpose of lighting Neres Chanukah is somehow or another to nullify that thing called Chachmas Chitzonius, external wisdom, through the Ner Mitzvah of Torah, or through the wisdom of Torah, because Greece, like we've learned a few times in the Medrash Rabbah, Rish Lakish tells us that in the 4 kingdoms that are mentioned in the second pasuk of Bereshis, darkness is Greece. And last week we mentioned, 2 weeks ago we already mentioned that Greece is darkness. What was that darkness? So Chazal say that. Rish Lakish says, that they darkened the eyes of the Jews through their decrees. And the Rambam quotes this in the beginning of Hilchos Channukah. But it could simply have, if you're talking about what did the Greek edicts do to the Jews, so why is that called darkness? You could say sadness or brokenness or despair or depression or pain or something. There's a lot of things that you could say. What does it mean that they darkened the eyes of the Jews through their gezeros? It seems to be that was their intention. Their intention was to instill a sense of darkness. And we've explained many times that darkness obviously doesn't simply mean a lack of photons. Yes? Darkness means in all madrigas that there's darkness. There's darkness that exists physically. The room is dark. The room is light. There's also darkness and light emotionally. A person can feel a sense of lightness versus a sense of darkness. Right? Religiously. Right? So there's religious enlightenment versus assimilated darkness. There's also intellectual enlightenment. Right? What do you say?
I was just curious if related to that, if darkness is taken, it's not just like the negativity, but more like an occlusion, the ability to see things with
Yes.
temptation,
Yes.
the assimilation, like the cosmopolitan delights and the luxuries and this and that, and the freedom from the following of Yiddishkeit, like openness of weakness and the rest of it.
100%.
And I feel like that would, of course, connect back to Hanukkah with the fact that it was very much a civil war.
Yes, very much so. But the goal of the Greeks was to somehow extinguish the light of the Jewish people by providing, and this is the tricky part, their own enlightenment. Greece was an enlightened society. Hellenism was an enlightened way of life. And the world was drunk off of this. Alexander the Great conquered more of the known world at that point in time, I think, than anybody before him, and pretty much anybody after him until Muhammad, I think. Meaning Muhammad was the only other person that managed to conquer all the way to the other side of Persia, as well as the entirety of the Levant, the Middle East, going into North Africa and Byzantine Turkey. Meaning Alexander the Great conquered all of that. And we spoke about this 2 weeks ago, that after the death of the untimely death of Alexander the Great at the young age of 32-ish, so his kingdom was split into four, and Jews were caught between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. That were pretty much, we got stuck between those two, and as they were going to war against each other, we got caught in the middle. But part of what they were doing here was, part of that destruction was that they darkened the eyes of the Jews with their decrees. What exactly is this darkness? Says the Bnei Yissaschar, quotes from the pasuk, "Ksil b'choshech hailech." A fool walks in darkness. That's the pasuk in Mishlei. A fool walks in darkness. There is a certain foolishness that Greece introduced. What was this darkness, this foolishness? He says, "Vine bizman shahaya chazon nifratz haya nevuah lemala min hateva v'aseichel." Once upon a time, 200 years earlier, there was still prophecy. Now, prophecy, by definition, is accessing wisdom that is outside of the natural order. Wisdom that comes from Hashem, directly from Hashem. It's not within the world of nature, it's the world beyond nature. Meaning, the Chokhmah of Hashem in Nevuah is inaccessible through this world. It's only accessible beyond this world. And to that end, we should differentiate here, and this is going to be exceedingly important to understand. And we're not going to get into too many details, because otherwise that would be the rest of the shir. But the Rambam describes that there is a very significant difference between Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah. What is the difference between Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah? So the Rambam describes that a person that meditates on the oneness of God, the unity of all creation, could elevate their psyche, their consciousness, to a state called Ruach HaKodesh, where they will look at the world differently. And at that point in time, the Rambam writes that a person that is experiencing Ruach HaKodesh knows that they are understanding the world in a level that is different from everybody else. They know that they experience that they are looking at the world differently. And that experience of seeing the world differently is from within the world. It is introspective. It is brilliant. It's unifying. It's everything. But it's all within the world of nature. It's all in Chachmas HaTeva. The world of math and science and biology and sociology and psychology, it's seeing all of this. All of these things. That's called Ruach HaKodesh, where the whole world makes sense. Things just add up. Shlomo HaMelech, Chazal explain, had a madrega of Chachmas Elokim. In fact, that is exactly what he asks for, right? What meaning Hashem gives him wisdom. I read the bookshelf, so now we can find things a little bit.
By the way, when I talk up what an amazing rabbi I have for people, I always describe how during these sessions, you will refer to things on your shelf, and you know exactly the page of the particular book that you're looking for.
Sometimes.
It genuinely amazes me.
Sometimes, but my wife made sure that we cleaned up before Yeri's up Sharon because it was messy, so we had to. Shlomo, say what? Right. That was it. My wife told me we're having people coming, we're going to take pictures. You have to clean up the bookshelf, so we did a shtickle. Tried.
It's too orderly.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. It'll be. Don't worry. It'll be messy soon enough. The pasuk says that this is in Melachim Aleph in the third parak, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to Shlomo HaMelech just after he becomes king. It says, "Begiva nira Hashem el Shlomo b'cholam halayla." Hashem appears to Shlomo that night in a dream. Vayomer Elokim shal ma etein. Shal ma etein lach. He says to Shlomo HaMelech in this dream. Shlomo HaMelech is 13 years old. The day that he becomes king is like his bar mitzvah, and Hashem says to him, "What do you want? What do you want?" You did for my father David tremendous kindness. As he walked appropriately with you. And you continue this immense kindness. You gave him a son, me, to sit on his throne as I do today. It says, "Va'ata Hashem Elokai," and now Hashem, my God, Atahim Lachtes Avdecha Tachas David Avi, you made me king on my father's throne. Va'anechi nar katan, I'm a little boy. Loi edat seis uvai, I don't know how to come, how to go. I know nothing. It says, "Va'avdecha b'seich amcha asher bacharta," and me, your servant, I'm amongst your nation which you have chosen. Am Rav, an enormous nation. Asher lo yimaneh v'lo yisafer me'rov, that is uncountable from it's innumerable. Give me, your servant. It's interesting what he asks for is a leiv shomer. What does that mean literally? A listening heart, which is peculiar because usually we listen with our ears. What's a listening heart? What's means to us? We're like, what do you mean a listening heart? To judge your people, to understand between good and evil. Who can judge your immensely weighty nation? And this matter was incredibly good in the eyes of God. Shlomo HaMelech asked this. Vayomer Elokim elav, and Elokim says to him, pay attention, Elokim says to him, Yan asher sha'alta sadavar azeh v'lo sha'alta lecha yomim rabim v'lo sha'alta lecha oish v'lo sha'alta nefesh oivecha, since you didn't ask for a long life and you didn't ask for wealth and you didn't ask for your enemies to be vanquished, v'sha'alta lecha lahavin lishba mishpat, you asked to understand, to hear justice. Hinei asisi kidvarecha, I've done as you asked. Hinei nasati lecha leiv chacham v'navain, asher kamoicha lo ya'ya lefanech v'acharecha lo yakum kamoicha. I've given you a leiv chacham v'navain, a heart that is wise and understanding. That's chachma and binah, chacham v'navain. I've given you a heart of chachma and bina. Asher kamocha lo haya lefanecha, that nobody's had before you. V'acharecha lo yakim kamocha, and nobody will have after you. V'gam asher lo sha'alta nasati lach, and also the things that you didn't ask for, I've given you. Gam asher, wealth, gam kavod, honor. Asher lo haya kamocha ish b'malachim kol yamecha, that nobody else has had, and no kings have had, and will have all of your life. Nobody's going to be as great as you. It's interesting. Yud Kei Vav Kei Hashem appears to Shlomo Melech B'Kivan, and then it's Elokim gives him these things. Says the Vilna Gaon, because Shlomo Melech's Chachma was Chachmas HaTeva, came from Elokim. Bereshis bara Elokim. Hashem, Elokim, creates the world of nature. Bereshis bara Elokim es Hashemayim es Haaretz. We're not going to get into the Kabbalah of this, but the Gra explains, the Leshem explains this in great detail in Sefer Adeya, that Shlomo HaMelech's wisdom came from the world of Bria, not from the world of Atzilus. In the four worlds that the Arizal explains in Kabbalah, there's Atzilus, which is the closest to Hashem, and then Bria, the world of creation, Yetzirah, formation, and Asiyah, action. The wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech came from the world of creation, which is all in the name Elokim. Bereshis bara Elokim. Shlomo HaMelech understood all of the sciences with a hasaga, with an understanding that was like kimat, as if he didn't need to be taught anything, he just understood it. To the extent that when Malka Sheva, the queen of Sheba, comes to visit Shlomo HaMelech, Pasuk says, she comes to challenge him with riddles. And the pasuk says that she, this is just later on, after the two babies sugya. So the Malka Sheva comes after he built his palace, and she says to him, she came to give him these riddles. The pasuk says that there was nothing that was ne'elam me'amelech. She told him what was on her heart, and he said to her what was on her heart. So what are the riddles? What's the chidos, the riddles? To explain very, very briefly, if I say somebody is angry, how do I know that they're angry? What's the giveaway that I know that somebody's angry? They raise their voice.
When steam is coming out of their ears.
The cartoons,
Their
right?
face is red.
Face is red.
The cross-shaped pulsing brain.
Yeah. The tone of their voice, the color of their face, their body language. How do I know that I'm angry? Do I have to look in the mirror to see the steam coming out of my ears?
You know you're angry.
You know that. How do I know that I'm angry?
You feel more pressure.
How do I know that I'm angry? But I don't. I have to look for simanim. I have to look for signs to know that you're angry.
Sometimes you don't realize you're angry until other people.
That's true. That's true. But it's possible for me to know that I'm angry. Can I know that you're angry without seeing any signs on you?
No, we can just assume or predict.
You could feel it.
You can project, right? You can say, if I was in your situation, Shlomo HaMelech understood the entirety of the world as he understood himself. Meaning Shlomo HaMelech understood that you were angry the same way, with the same intimate knowledge as him understanding himself. He understood all of Chachmas HaTeva, all of psychology and sociology and botany and biology and ornithology and animal husbandry, to the extent that Shlomo HaMelech could understand the conversations going on between birds and the conversations going on at Sichas HaOifus and Sichas HaElonos, the conversations going on between trees. He understood all of it. All of these things. He looked at the world and understood all of it. The world was unlocked to Shlomo HaMelech. The whole thing. That's the Chochmas HaTeva of Shlomo HaMelech. But all of that, my dear friends, is all Ruach HaKodesh. That is not yet Nevuah. Nevuah is me'al hateva. It is beyond nature. And while it's true that we don't have nevuah today, we do have something that remains for us from beyond the world of nature, and that is called Torah. Torah comes from beyond the world of nature. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah, which has many connections to the world of nature. One can use the world of nature to understand parts of Torah that might have been difficult to understand without nature. But Torah is outside of the world of nature. It's beyond the world of nature. Meaning everything that Shlomo Melech understood, everything in the world of nature, comes from the world of Bria and below. Torah is in the world of Atzilus. That's beyond and beyond that. That is far beyond the world of nature. Meaning no amount of introspecting into the world will teach you Torah.
Would it give you knowledge of Hashem in any meaningful
Yes, in an
way?
exceedingly meaningful way. In fact, that is exactly how the Medrash describes Avram Avinu became Avram. He introspected into the world and realized that there must be a unifying creator of all. So you can understand that there is a God through nature.
So there's a value to natural philosophy.
100%.
It doesn't take you all the way home.
It doesn't take you anywhere near all the way home.
Yeah.
It takes you to Lemashal. I'll give you the following example. Knowledge of nature is the same as, let's say you have a guy that's looking to get married. So somebody describes that there is this amazing girl, an amazing, like that fits perfectly with everything that he wants to achieve in his life. This is the girl that he's going to marry. Great. And from learning everything that he can from friends and family and all the rest of it, he might finally come to the conclusion that there is such a girl. But that's very different from meeting her, which is even more different from marrying her, which is even more different from building a life together with her. Right? Avram Avinu experiences the beginning of prophecy as he knows that there is God, knows nothing about God. To the extent that the Medrash describes Avram Avinu's first encounter with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when Hashem says to Avram, Lech lecha me'artzecha mi'moladcha mi'beis avicha el haaretz asher areka. Go forth from your birthplace, from your homeland, to the land that I will show you. Says the Medrash Rabbah, he tzitz alav Baal Habira. It was like Hashem was like going like that, like he waved at him, like hi. That was it. Avram Avinu's first encounter with Hashem was after mastering all of natural philosophy and understanding as much of nature as he absolutely possibly could. Avram Avinu experiences like, wow, there must be a God. And Hashem like goes, hey, it's me. That was Avram Avinu's first instance of Nevuah. That was it. And he has to live with that like for 25 years until the next time that Hashem speaks to him. From the age of 75 to the age of 100, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't speak to Avram. Avram Avinu lives off of the emunah that he knows that there is a God and that he has encountered that God. That's the whole story. Until finally, after going down to Egypt and Sarah being abducted, and then the whole thing, he comes back to Eretz Yisrael and Hashem says to him, you're going to have a son. And you're going to inherit the land of Israel. Like, that's the bris ben basar, the covenant between the parts. And at that point, Hashem speaks to Avram again, and their relationship develops thereafter. But everything that Avram has gets him to the point of knowing that there is a God. That's it. The whole world can tell you that there is a God, but it won't tell you anything about that God. You can't understand anything about that God. There's a story that the Channukah told that the Channukah told over from his Rabbi Rav Simcha bar Pshischa. He said that he was once walking with his Rabbi, the Yid HaKadosh of Pshischa, who says to him, Bunim, where does your emunah in Hashem come from? Where does your emunah come from? And Simcha Rabban Shishcha says, Pasuk says in Tehillim, Su'u Marim, Su'u Marim Eina Ru'u Mi Bara Ela. Lift up your eyes and see who created this. And the Yid HaKadosh says, Bunim, that's very beautiful, but that's not where a Jew gets emunah from. A guy can get emunah from, lift up your eyes and see, who created the world. That's how Avram got emunah. A Jew gets emunah because Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotzeichem Me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem, your God, I took you out of Egypt. Our emunah doesn't come from natural sciences. It's good to have that too. But our emunah in Hashem comes from the fact that we have a personal relationship with God. This is called the God of history. Meaning there's the God of nature and the God of history. They're the same God. But whereas the nations of the world can only experience the God of nature, nations don't have history with God. We have history. So in this, the Baal Shem HaKadosh explains that Kriya Shema is different from all of the other mitzvahs, and that Kriya Shema has 2 meditations before we get to do the mitzvah. There's 2 very distinct brachas. Now I know Channukah has 2 brachas, and according to Ashkenazim, Tefillin has 2 brachas. But they're all on different parts of things. Kriya Shema has 2 brachas before you say Kriya Shema, and they are totally different thematically. The first bracha that you say before you say Kriya Shema is Yotzer Oru V'Arichai Shechaz V'Shalom V'Reis HaKol. Hashem, who created the world, created the luminaries, created light and darkness. And then we go through the whole bracha until we get to Or Chadash Al Tzion Torah. We're yearning Hashem for a new light. But Baruch Atah Hashem Yotzer Ma'oris. Blessed are you, Hashem, who creates, who forms the lights. That is the bracha of creation. And within that bracha of creation, we talk about the fact that the angels and all the different spheres and everybody is acknowledging that God is the God of creation. They all singing to each other and talking to each other, etc. But that's God of creation of the world, spiritually, physically, everything. But then after we say Yosemaris, God, you created all illumination. So why don't we just say Shema Yisrael there? Because there's another story to our relationship with Hashem, and that is specifically our relationship, which is Ava Rabba Avtanu Hashem Elokeinu. Rebbeinu Shalom, you love us. It's not a story of creation, that's a story of us. Not just that, you gave us a Torah, and you told us how to live. And then we end that bracha with, you chose your Jewish people with love. Meaning you love us, we have a personal relationship with you. Says the Baal Shem Tov, because you need both of these things in order to say Shema Yisrael. You need to have an understanding, a deep understanding of the God of science, God of nature. But sometimes there'll be some, Epicurus, Ivy League professor, whatever, that will not believe in God and will be smarter than you. It happens. It happens that sometimes you have an Epicurus that's smarter than you. Right? Right? Sometimes you'll have such a, and it'll be, I don't know, screaming free Palestine, death to the Jews, and with multiple doctorates because he's a genius. So, and you'll be sitting in his class, and he'll prove to you that there's no God in science. Says the Baal Shem Tov, so what's a Jew supposed to do? You look at the other bracha, Ava Rabba Avtanu. Yeah, okay, but you can't tell me that the Jewish people doesn't have a relationship with God, because the Jewish people exist outside of natural sciences. We have existed all throughout history, and there's no explanation for the survival of the Jewish people. Famously, Mark Twain ended off his essay with, what is the secret of their survival? It does make sense. By the way, Mark Twain wasn't the first person to say so. The very first person to use that argument was Moshe Rabbeinu. When Paro says to him, Mi Hashem, Asher Yishma B'Kala, who is Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke, that I should listen to him? So Moshe Rabbeinu responds, Elokei HaIvrim, the God of the Hebrews. So Rabbeinu Bechai explains in that pasuk. What's he saying to him? He's saying, "Parala, parala. I understand. You don't believe in Sforno. You see this in the Sforno as well. You don't believe in a creator." The language of the Sforno is mi'afisus muchlat. You don't believe in a creator that created the world ex nihilo. You believe that the world, the universe has always existed as a static universe theory. You believe that the world has always been as it is, that there's no such thing as a creator. You don't believe that there's a koine shemayim va'aretz, that there's something that created and takes ownership over heaven and earth. But Bubala, you have to admit something strange going on with these Jews. Doesn't make sense. Because your entire goal was to squash the growth of the Jewish population. That's why you levied these heavy taxes on them to cull their birth rate. And that's why you threw their babies into the Nile so that you would murder the next generation. And that's why you've enslaved them in these insane, backbreaking schemes of labor, because you don't want the Jewish people to propagate. And yet somehow or another, kasher yano sam kein yarbe v'chein yifratz, the more that you've afflicted them, the more that they've grown. That doesn't make logical sense, right? Right? And Paro looks at him and goes, there's no response to that argument. His response is, yeah, well, I'm still not going to let them go. But what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to him is, what is the secret of their survival? I understand that you don't believe in, creator. You'll learn about him. We'll talk in 10 plagues time. But for right now, even you have to admit that you can't explain rationally the existence of the Jewish people under all of your attempts to destroy them. You have failed miserably at the one thing that you wanted to do to them. You have to admit that there's something strange going on. What is the secret of their survival? Says the Baal Shem HaKadosh. To that end, Kriya Shema is leaning on two values. Value number one is the introspective, deep philosophical understanding that there is a God, the God of nature. But if some professor comes along and proves that that's not true, denies that, well, then there's the God of history. But sometimes it happens that the God of history is hidden. Sometimes the God of history hides his face. And therefore, it's important for a Jew to understand the God of nature. That even when history doesn't seem like it's working for me, and there have been times in Jewish history that it hasn't always felt like God is leading our hand, and we believe that it's still true, but it doesn't feel that way. So there's still the God of nature. You still look out and say, whoa. So let's get back to Greece here for a second. What was the darkness of the Greeks? Says the Bnei Yisrael, once upon a time there was prophecy which gave us an inkling, an understanding, an opening into a world beyond the world of nature. He says, in that world, in those worlds, there was no concern about going to college, studying natural sciences, studying philosophy. Go for it. Do all of those things. It's great. Understand every single iota of the world that God created. Because there was always a window to understand the world beyond that. There was always a window to understand the world beyond that. That was the world of prophecy. Like the Gra writes that you would come to the Beis HaMikdash and you would go up to like a random kohen who was like hanging out in the Beis HaMikdash, of which those that were not Balei Nevuah, were not prophets, were Balei Ruach HaKodesh, certainly had Ruach HaKodesh. And you'd look at him and you'd say, I'm struggling with this and with that. And you would say, yeah, that's because your soul comes from this place in Shemayim and this is the work that you have to do in this world. They would just explain these things to you. Lamala min hateva, above nature. He says, Ma she'en kein shenistama nevuah v'hanhaga elyona mustaras bateva. But this all changed once prophecy ended. Because that meant that the way that Hashem interacts with the world is now completely hidden within the world of nature. Meaning the world of beyond nature, of miracles and of a profound understanding beyond the natural order, was now dim. It was very hard to understand, to break through that glass ceiling, so to speak, of what's beyond the world of nature. I mean, the world of nature is enormous and vast and brilliant, but there's a whole world beyond that. He says, in a world without prophecy, yesh chashash sakana shelo yitu chas v'shalom acharei chachmas hachitzonis ativiyos. And in that world, there is a deep concern that a Jew would lose sight of the fact that there is a world beyond nature. And you drown in the vastness of natural sciences, which are infinite. Wisdom is infinite. We spoke about a few weeks ago, that each of the Malchios, Bavel and Pras, Yavan and Edom, all chase after something infinite. The infinity of Persia was in wealth and happiness. And the infinity of Bavel was in kavod and gvura. And gvura is a wonderful thing. Control and power and restraint. And Bavel was excellent at this. You can chase that infinitely. You can chase wealth infinitely. And honor infinitely. And wisdom infinitely. And that's the pasuk that we said at the end of the fast day Haftarah. Don't be too excited about your wisdom and about your wealth and about your gvura. Because all of these things are within the natural world. All of it's massively important. And you can spend your whole life involved in these things. But if you learn all of these things through the light of Torah, inspired by the wisdom of Torah, then you don't have to be worried about everything else. Without Torah, you're in deep trouble. You can think that all of that is all that there is. And then nature hides God. But in a world of prophecy, which is beyond that, you can see much more. He says, Vihine bizman shlita Yevanim, during the time of the Shlita of the Yevanim of Greek sovereignty, Kfar Batla Nevuah, there was no prophecy any longer. Vihine Ratza Yevanim lahagbir chachmas hachitzonis. And the entirety of Greece was trying to convince you that all that there was natural sciences. Science and technology and Socratic method and Aristotelian philosophy. We can explain the whole world using science. Which is why, says Bnei Yissaschar, for the superfans, that the Chachma of Yavan, Greece, wanted to explain that everything was based on natural sciences, the constellations in the world. The constellations is, in Hebrew, is called Galgal, which is the gematria of Yavan. Because Greek believed that everything can be described and explained by the natural world. And that's called Chayshech. That's called darkness. To dissuade us from the light of Torah, to prevent us from the light of Torah, through whose light we will be able to encounter all of the wisdom of the world without concern. It says, Al Kain Hayanes Ba'ara, and therefore the miracle was a miracle. It was breaking the laws of nature, and it was specifically with light. Because light is that thing which is emblematic of illuminating the darkness. Remez la Torah ar, because the Torah is described as light. It is the light that is beyond the natural world. Menorah B'darim, and that is why the menorah is in the south of the Beis Hamikdash. And this is what Shemen is. Shemen and menorah are related to Chachma, to wisdom, because the light of the menorah is to illuminate the world of wisdom. When there is wisdom, but that wisdom by itself is immensely dark. And the menorah illuminates that wisdom so that it's no longer darkened wisdom. That wisdom now is enlightened. And now let's understand what this has to do with Parnasa. It says, "V'nei mi shemevin be'emes shekol hanhagas hativios hamurgalos heim al pi haTorah behashgacha." If you understand that the entirety of nature is operating also as an aspect of Hashem's wisdom, of Hashem's light, that the entirety of the natural world is a refraction of the light of God. It's a way of Hashem running the world. That's one of the ways that Hashem runs the world. It's called nature. Hine gam beholcho bashuk lemescha chiyotze lo yasim magamasay she'al yedei hadavar hazeh hisig mevukashasay. If a person understands that the natural order of the world is just one aspect of Hashem's relationship with the world, then when you go to do business, so you do things that make sense in the natural world. You buy, you sell, you trade. You get on the phone, you make a call, you have a business partner, you borrow money, you lend money, you have an investment, whatever it might be. Then all of those things that you do are important. They're normal. You should do that. But you also understand that that thing that you do might or might not give you what Hashem wants to give you. It might be through that, might be some other way. Your job is to operate in the natural world with an understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give you whatever He wants to give you in whatever way He wants. And anybody that has ever tried to make money at any point in time, which is everybody around this table, I think, understands that sometimes you put in a tremendous amount of effort into something and it yields nothing. And the side thing that you happen to whatever, all of a sudden is the thing that makes your parnasa. The thing that on the off chance, yeah, fine, I'll buy that one stock. I don't even like fruit. Right? Now you have stocks in a company called Apple, Beseda. Right? You would have known then that was going to be whatever. I mean, for every one stock that you buy, there's billions more that fail. There's one that's matzlich. So you do your best. You figure it out. What do you use to figure out the best thing to buy and sell and trade and do? What do you use? What tools do you have?
Inverse cream.
Right?
Seichel.
Wisdom, knowledge, understanding. You use your brain. And what you use your brain for is a deep understanding of the natural world. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give it to you through that or through something else. And so it says in Yisachar as follows. Rak kafi hishtaglusay b'Torah v'mitzvos kein hisig mevukashay al yidei hamischar chiyotze. Through your effort in Torah and mitzvahs, you will be able to earn whatever you need to earn through the thing that you do. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give you whatever you deserve to get, whatever is appropriate for you to get. And that will come through whatever efforts you have. It could be a lot, it could be a little. It could be in the thing that you spent money and time and resources on. Or it could be through the random contact that you made because you happened to be in that place doing that thing. Anything's possible. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can arrange your parnasa however He wants, in ways that are well beyond what makes sense. Meaning, if you were to ask people how they made their money, 9 times out of 10, it It will not be from what they thought they were going to make their money from when they started out in college or in business. 9 times out of 10, that's not how people make a parnasa. It doesn't work that way. He says, and were it to be that a person deeply understood that their parnasa came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through whatever efforts a person needs to engage in, a lot or a little, whatever it might be, if a person really understood that with deep, profound understanding, understood that for real, then we would know that you don't need to spend day and night wandering around the market. In fact, he writes, you wouldn't even need to go to the markets at all. He says, even though it is true that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be that he gives you everything that he gives you enclosed in the natural world. He wants the natural world to still be there. He wants to give it to you in natural ways. He's not making things miraculously. Im kol ze yazmin lo Hashem yisbarach be'inyan hanire gam beveisai ha'inyan hanirtze gam beveisai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could also give it to you in your house. That you could be, you don't need to fly across the world and do whatever you could be sitting on your computer and make a cell here, make a cell there, and do the whole thing. You don't need to schlep everything. He says, and this is what the Torah describes with regards to the man, that the man, for the people that had emunah and had a close relationship with Hashem, the man landed at their doorstep. People that had less emunah had to work and walk further. So he says, fell in front of their house like half the height of a person, just a pile of man outside the door. They wouldn't even need to bend down to pick up their man. Just fell at the front door counter height. So listen to this. It says, and this is Musa for all of us. All of the necessities to work hard and schwitz. Baim la'adam, come to a person mitzad shehu ma'amin adayin b'tivyos v'chachmas chitzonius. Come to a person, all of the fact that we have to schlep and schwitz and work and toil is because we believe that we make our parnasa through the natural world. Bis chachmai al yedei zois ha'pu'ula yovolai mevukashay. V'al yedei pu'ula acheres mevukashacha. We think that if I do this, I'll get that parnasa. And if I do that, I'll get that parnasa. This is ki'ilu. You're standing in an elevator. And the elevator is set to Shabbos mode. You ever been in an elevator in Shabbos mode with a toddler? It's an amazing experience. It's like a little kid that doesn't know that they shouldn't be pushing buttons. And they push the button. They keep on pushing buttons, all the buttons. Until finally they're pushing the door close button until finally the door closes. And the kid thinks, I finally got it to work. You go, Bubala, the door is going to close anyway. And then it's going to go to the second floor and the third floor. It's all programmed. Your pushing the buttons isn't changing it. It's good that you feel that you're pushing the buttons. It's nice. But says if a Jew deeply understood that through the smallest amount of effort and the greatest amount of emunah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give you everything, so then you spend your time doing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to do. He says, but if a person doesn't, then it's true. You have to put in a lot of effort. Because in the world of Teva, you do need to put in a lot of effort in order to make money. In the world of Teva, you need to put in effort in order to earn. He says, Al Kain bimher bi'amenu asita ha'aretz shetaishu gluskos, like the Gemara says in Shabbos, that when Mashiach comes, the trees will grow cakes and sweets and clothing. Meaning it'll come naturally. That all of these things will happen by themselves. You won't have to work hard. I was schmoozing this out with one of my colleagues a little while ago, and we were discussing. I said, I think that this is pshat. If like humanity figures out this AI thing and all the rest of it, yeah, it could well be that we, in the next few years, maybe decades, we live in a day and an age where the vast majority of everything that we need is just done for us. We're already pretty close. I'm saying I have a laundry machine going. My great-great-great-grandmother probably would spend an entire day doing what the laundry machine does in half an hour. My job is to push the button. And I don't always remember to do that. I'm saying we're living in a world where a lot of our malacha is nases al yedei acherim. A lot of what we do is done through machines. Magic. Right? But says there's a world of possibility where a Jew doesn't have to spend your whole life working like chasing a tail. He says, and in such a world, there won't need to be all of this buying and selling. Because at that point in time, all of the needs of understanding the natural world as the only methodology of making parnasa will be batal. You won't need that. You won't need to be like, well, if I do this and I do that, then I'll make parnasa. So everything comes from my Kadosh Baruch Hu. People understand it clearly. We will get to a point where it won't be dependent on how much effort you put in the stock market. It'll simply depend on how much effort you put in learning Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to invest in you and give you more things to be able to do more in His world. And this Reb Nosson writes in Likutei Halachos, in Hilchos Rosh Chodesh, from the Likutei Moran. This is what Chazal mean, Ad shetichla regel min hashuk. That that we light Chanukah candles, Ad shetichla regel min hashuk, means literally until the feet leave the marketplace. I mean, the point of the Neres Chanukah is to turn the lights on so that you come home from work. It's an invitation that everybody should come home from the market. Because the marketplace, that place of buying and selling, Rav Nachman writes, and this is, I think we learned about this once before here. I don't remember. But it's an interesting thing, and I'm going to break all the rules of economics. But in economics, you know that there's markets go up and markets go down. Bull markets and bear markets and all the other animals, right? The truth is, one of the biggest chidushim of the modern capitalistic economy is the idea that the economy is not a zero-sum game, meaning that the economy can grow. It used to be, in the economies that the Gemara described even, it was a zero-sum game. If there's more money being made there's less money being there's a limited amount of stuff in the world. The world is limited. There's only a X amount, and if I have more, you have less. That's it. Zero-sum game of everything in the world. And one of the biggest chidushim of modern capitalism is that you can grow an economy. That you can have more stuff. That I can have more and you can have more. And when people are living with that mindset, then that's called a growing economy. And when people invest in that, that's a bull market. But here's the interesting thing. Strictly speaking, says Rav Nachman, economies can grow infinitely. They don't need to have ups and downs. Why do economies shrink? Why do people pull money out of investments? Why does it happen? No, Trevor, why do people pull money out of investments?
To buy more Bitcoin.
Because ultimately, either of my bad midas or your bad midas. Right? Either it's because I'm worried, I'm nervous, I'm jealous, I'm angry. whatever, you meaning deeply seated fears, or I'm worried that you're going to screw me over. Like I'm worried that you're going to cheat me.
What about just a mistake?
People make mistakes, fine.
But just what if you forecast that something's going to turn out better than it turned out to be, and no one was blameworthy morally?
Were it to be that everybody was entirely honest about everything, that wouldn't happen. And the economy could just grow. Meaning, this is what Rav Nachman says, we will one day reach a point in time, the shuk, the marketplace, is the place of buying and selling, but more than that, it's the place of haggling and negotiating. It's the place of competition, right? But that which we gain in growing an economy through competition can be gained far more if we were doing it in collaboration. And if all of humanity was collaborating on growing in the best interest of everybody, without bad midos, without being jealous and angry and upset with the success of another person, well, then we reach a tipping point of infinite economic growth. And this is where we get in from the world of science to what is currently science fiction, of expanding beyond planet Earth and into the solar system and inhabiting other planets and mining the asteroid belt, and meaning we can grow infinitely. There is enough resources on planet Earth and certainly in the solar system to sustain all of humanity and beyond with wealth and prosperity for as much of an infinite future as humanity can see ourselves having. That's all possible. If we were all operating with the perspective of Lamala min hateva. So this, says Bnei Yisachar, this is what the Gemara then explains, until the feet of the Tarmudaim are gone. Who are the Tarmudaim? So this is a medrash it's in the Zohar in a few places, but it's in the Pirkei Rebelezer Zuta, the final parak of Pirkei Rebelezer, of Tanad Ve'Eliyahu Zuta in the 25th parak. Says the Tanad Ve'Eliyahu a story of HaKadosh Baruch Hu defending humanity and Avram Avinu in particular from the claim of two angels that told Hashem not to create humanity. These are the angels, the Gemara in Yom and Pevav, that these angels are called Uzzah and Azazel, the two angels called Uzzah and Azazel that said, Ma enesh ki tizkarena, that why should we create humanity? They're just going to rebel against you, Hashem. And they come down to earth and they mess up how they mess up, etc. Where do they end up? They end up, says the Zohar Kodesh, in a place that Shlomo Melech goes to visit, that the Zohar calls behind the mountains of darkness, the Hari HaChoshech, a place called Tarmod. A place called Tarmod, which is connected to the word Tardima, being asleep, and to merid, to rebelling. The Zohar HaKadosh explains in Zohar Chelik Beis in Parashat Mishpatim. We're not going to do it all inside now, but just very much in a moment. Says the Zohar that Shlomo HaMelech would travel to learn all of the wisdoms of nature, from beyond the mountains of darkness, from these angels that fell, from the world of Hashem to the world of nature, that question the validity and the veracity and the importance and the value of the creation of mankind. It is from there that Shlomo Melech gained all of the insights of everything in the universe. Everything. In the natural world. And that's called Tarmod. Says the Bnei Yisachar, Ad shetichla rigla de Tarmodai. until the feet of the Talmudai, that wisdom, which has a foothold in the marketplaces and in the way that we interact. The point of Ner Chanukah is to remind us for 8 nights in every generation that the Chokhmah of Torah is greater than that. And if a Jew understands, and this is pshat, in the mitzvah and in the miracle of Chanukah, if a Jew understands that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of everything, then a $1 investment can become an $8 investment, can become a $64 investment. Meaning the miracle of the oil was quite literally that one drop of oil can last way more. How? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. And the avodah of a Jew on Chanukah is to realize, in a very, very simple pshat way, and I've had people ask me this, Shala halach lamaisa, Rabbi, I have to be at work until 8 o'clock at night. When am I going to light Chanukah? I have to be at work until 11 o'clock at night. When am I going to light Chanukah candles? And I said to them, go home from work early. No, I can't do that. Why not? Why not? My boss will be upset with me. Explain to him that there's a mitzvah called Neres Chanukah and you're coming home to light candles. But what about my parnasa? That is your parnasa. That's the whole point. Come home and realize that you don't need to be at work for that amount of time. You can be at home with your family and have a little bit more emunah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of the rest. That's the thing that we are committing to when we light Neres Chanukah, is recognizing and realizing that all of the chachmas in the whole world don't make a parnasa. And I'm going to be very honest. I know some very, very, very smart people that are very, very, very broke. And I know some very, very, very dumb people that are in Hollywood and on TV and on the news and all of a sudden have opinions in politics. They're idiots. Because the amount of chokhmah that you have and the amount of parnasa that you have are not connected to each other. And the amount of work that you put in and the amount of money that you make from it, not connected to each other. That's not to say that you don't have to work, you do. It's just a shayla of how much. It's simply a shayla of how much. It's not a question of how much oil you are lighting. It's simply a question of, okay, the job of the Jew is to light the oil, beseder. Put the oil in the thing and light the oil. How long it lasts, what happens to it? Mina shamayim. That's the avodah of Chanukah, friends. That's it. That's the whole thing. So you talk about what's the secret to passive income by a Jew? It's understanding that the more that you learn and the more that you daven and the more that you're connected to Torah, mitzvahs, and chesed, the more that you say, Ribono Shel Olam, I'd like money so that I can do whatever you want me to do in this world. I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do for a parnasa. Whatever makes sense. I'm going to work in the world of Teva, but I understand that my parnasa comes me'ala Teva. It comes from beyond that, which is the entirety of Chanukah. Rabim biyad ma'atim. Many at the hands of a few. An oil that lasts 8 times longer and could have gone for more. The secret of passive income of the Jewish people is that you're passive in this world and very active in Chachmas Hashem. And then the rest falls the way that it needs to fall. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of it. And what Yovan wanted to do was to make the absurd and insane claim that we could somehow or another quantify, analyze, and explain the amount of money that you make is connected to what job you do and how well you do it. And while that sounds great on paper, it's just not true. It's never been true. It's never been true. It's never ever been true. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one, the Gemara at the beginning of Maseches Taanis, that holds the keys to children, and parnasa and tchias hamesa. No amount of medical science can explain how come these people can't. I don't know if you know this. A third of infertility in the world. A third is because there's medical issues with him. A third is medical issues with her. And a third is unexplained infertility. You know what that means? We don't know. Don't know. And as much as a person might be the biggest chacham in the world, the Gemara says that the key to Geshamim is by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no amount of wisdom that anybody can have that can predict exactly what's going to happen with the weather. We can't. It's one of my favorite Yiddish expressions. You know what a weatherman is in Yiddish? It's the best Yiddish word in the world. I love it. A weatherman is a veternovi. The weather prophet. Right? It's great. It's a mwah. Right? The veternovi. Ooh. Why? Because, hey, what does he know? He's a prophet. Meaning, by God, he's a prophet. It's a prophet. Whee! Which means if you get it right, you get it right. If you get it wrong, nobody holds you responsible. Right? That's a veteranov. That's a, what are you going to, you don't know. And then they try to figure out, like, if we're living in a simulation, so maybe it is that the climate of planet Earth is irreducibly complex. I saw this recently. That you would need a simulation as large as the universe in order to simulate the weather. Yeah, you know what that's called? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of it. That's what that means. You go with all the fancy terminology. They're trying to explain how it is that we don't know. You know why we don't? Because we don't know. Because it's beyond. Because there's Teva, and then there's beyond Teva, which is Chachma beyond that. You can't understand that. You can understand, Shlomo Melech understood from Talmud all of the Bria. What Shlomo Melech says about himself, I wanted to become wise, and it is beyond me. Because Ruach HaKodesh has a limit. Nevuah is beyond that. And Torah is that world of Nevuah. Beyond the world of Nevuah. It's Chachmas Hashem, which is Kiner Mitzvah V'Torah Or. That's the light of Torah. And the more that a person engages with Torah, understanding that everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more that we understand that a drop of oil can last 8 times more. That's the secret of Channukah. And the more that we get this imunah straight within ourselves, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, the more that we will see it bear fruit. And Hashem should bless us all like crazy. Please God, we should celebrate all the way from now until Purim.
Amen.